Hello, everyone, and welcome to another TEDxColeParkStudio speaker reveal and TED Talk reveal. I'm Lisa Wisner, super excited to be your curator of TEDxColeParkStudio, and I couldn't be more excited today to be celebrating my friend, Dr. John Cicala, who is going to be giving us a presentation today that's all about the story of Rufus, one of America's founding fathers. And so you may be wondering, why are we going live today on a Friday afternoon? Well, also today, apart from being a Friday afternoon, is Constitution Day. And so I want you all to celebrate the day. It's also a day that is all about celebrating citizenship here in the United States of America. And so with that, I want to present to you our guest for today, who is Dr. John Cicala. Welcome.
Hello, everybody. Thank you.
Yeah, we're so excited you're here. So before we play your talk, tell us about Constitution Day. Why are we celebrating you?
Oh, wow. Well, it was 234 years ago today, September 17th, 1787, that the Constitution was signed. Now, it hadn't been ratified yet, but at the Constitutional Convention, all the delegates that had gotten together and argued back and forth, greatest negotiation in the country's history by far. September 17th was when they signed it and said, let's go try and get this ratified. So this is the day, I believe it was in 2005, that Congress recognized September 17th as the holiday to honor the people that did that, which is kind of cool.
I know, it is kind of cool. And we like to do cool stuff over here at TEDx Cole Park. So we're super excited that you are actually going to be presenting a talk to us that, by the way, sneak peek, you have no idea, TED.com has already approved your talk.
Yay!
So today is the best day for us to be celebrating your story. So for those of y'all who are watching right now, just to remind you, we're actually doing a talk reveal. But like I said, the talk has already been approved by TED.com. We're super excited about that. And fitting, right? Because today is the day that this talk needed to be approved on this Constitution Day, on Citizenship Day. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and play the TED Talk. And then I invite you all who are watching right now to stay tuned, bring your questions with you as you listen to the presentation today, and join in the discussion through the chat. So first of all, let us know where you're joining from. So get in the chat, let us know where you're joining from, and then give some awesome affirmation to John Cicala for doing this amazing talk for us. And yes, and we hope you enjoyed the show. So with that, I present to you the story of Rufus, one of America's most important and yet unknown founding fathers, the framer and signer of the Constitution. And I have to mention that Dr. John Cicala, now that I've learned that, I have known Dr. Cicala
John.
for a
John.
while, and he has never told me his name is pronounced Cicala, and so I've always just known him as Dr. Cicala. Fun
Cicala
fact.
works. That's the Italian pronunciation. That's what makes
Yes.
it cool.
I was like, I need to pull my Italian accent. Like, I don't have one. I have nothing to. I've never even gone to Italy, so I don't know where I'm getting that from. But I have to mention that I know Dr. Cicala as a negotiation expert. So when I hear and see his name, all I think about is the United Nations negotiation expert that trains people how to negotiate in the UN. Dr. Cicala is also the Associate Professor of Marketing at the University of North Alabama, where he has been a member of the faculty since 2019. Prior to this, he was a tenured Professor of Marketing at Texas A&M University in Kingsville. And this is where he directed the Center for Negotiation after receiving training from the Program of Negotiation at Harvard Law School, MIT, and Tufts University in Massachusetts. He received his undergraduate and graduate degree from the University of Memphis. He is also an avid history buff. I think you're getting kind of like, why is she saying all this about me? I can kind of sense it, right? I can sense your face is like, what?
I'm turning red. I feel it.
I'm going to say more, specifically with regards to history and politics. I can tell you that Dr. John Cicala is all about learning about colonial America. He resides in Huntsville. Yes, he resides in Huntsville, Alabama with his wife of 26 years. Yay, Karen, who is a 7th and 8th grade math teacher. So first of all, affirmations for our teachers. You know, our educators do it all. And so every time I hear somebody's a teacher, I'm just like, oh, thank you so much for existing in our universe. So thank you so much, Karen. We love you. We appreciate you. And Karen is actually a teacher in the Huntsville City School System. And so with that, I present to you the story of Rufus.
In 2005, America began celebrating September 17th as National Constitution Day. Sometimes it's called Citizenship Day, but the holiday was created in order to honor and recognize the efforts of 39 founding fathers who put a lot of time and energy and effort to create the United States Constitution. Well, in their honor today, I'd like to tell you a little bit about one of those founding fathers who signed the Constitution, my 5th great-grandfather, Rufus King. Now, I just learned about Rufus a few years ago after my mom had passed away. I realized I didn't know a whole lot about her background or family. So I joined a genealogy software program, did a little work, and found out that Rufus was actually an ancestor of my maternal grandfathers. What I learned in his story was absolutely incredible, and it's what I want to share with you right now. Rufus was born in 1755 in the northern part of the Massachusetts colony, the part that's now the state of Maine. When he was 4 years old, his mother passed away. When he was 10, he went with his father on a trip to Boston to find a lawyer to help with some legal issues back home. Well, the lawyer they found became one of Rufus's lifelong mentors, role models, and friends. The lawyer was John Adams. Rufus, about 10 years later, graduated from Harvard College, first in his class. Signed up for the Army, became a major in the Revolutionary War Army, and after his service there was over, he went back to Massachusetts and studied law. And eventually he was appointed as a representative for Massachusetts to the Confederation Congress that met in New York City. And in 1787, Rufus was selected to become one of the youngest delegates to the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia, where he served on more committees than anyone else there. At the encouragement of his friend Alexander Hamilton, his fellow Federalist, Rufus decided to move permanently to New York and start over there. He was elected to the New York State Assembly, and in 1789, Rufus King became New York's very first United States Senator. He served in this position for 7 years until President Washington appointed him as Minister Plenipotentiary to the Court of St. James in England and King George III. But Rufus flourished over there, absolutely loved it. He remained in that position throughout the remainder of Washington's term, all of John Adams's, and the first 3 years of Thomas Jefferson's. In fact, it was while he was working for Jefferson that Rufus learned about a secret deal Napoleon had made to regain control of New Orleans and the Mississippi River. Well, Rufus wasn't going to have any of that and immediately notified Secretary of State James Madison and began the process that eventually led to the Louisiana Purchase. which was something Rufus helped negotiate. After all that, Rufus decided it was time to come back, bought a little farm in Jamaica, New York, and spent the next 10 years as a gentleman farmer until the events with the War of 1812 put Rufus back into the Senate. And he stayed there for 12 years until 1825, when President John Quincy Adams asked him to once again serve as our minister to the Court of St. James and help repair some fences. Rufus agreed and went back to London, but he was only able to stay for about a year until his health forced him to return home, which he did. And on April 29th, 1827, less than a year after the deaths of John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, Rufus King passed away after nearly 50 years of public service. But his story doesn't end there. What absolutely astounded me was when I learned about his descendants and other members of his family and all that they had accomplished. He had a half-brother who became a congressman from Massachusetts. Another half-brother became the first governor of the state of Maine. One of Rufus's 4 sons became the governor of New York. Another son became a congressman from New Jersey. Another one was president of Columbia College. And a 4th one became the Speaker of the House in the Ohio State Legislature. One of his grandsons was a New York State Senator, and another grandson graduated from West Point, was appointed as the United States Minister to the Vatican before and after the Civil War. During the Civil War, he was a brigadier general for the Union Army. And another one of Rufus's grandsons became the president of the University of Cincinnati after having served as dean of their law school. One of Rufus's granddaughters married a gentleman named William Henry Waddington, who in 1879 became Prime Minister of France. And this was my favorite part. His great-great-great-grandson-in-law was Irving Berlin, the man who wrote God Bless America. So Rufus's and his family's story was absolutely incredible, and I appreciate the opportunity for being able to share that with you today. Thank you.
Yay, Dr. Cicala!
I got to get out in the sun.
There was a lot of light in that room, right?
There was. It was very bright in the studio with Carlos that day.
Yeah. Well, how does it feel? You gave a talk.
Well, I realized I forgot. Rufus actually had 5 sons. I left out his youngest one, Frederick, who became a doctor. So sorry, Frederick. Didn't mean to leave you out there.
Well, I have
but
to
it was fun.
I have to mention that we have a special guest with us. And so if I'm thinking about somebody who may be able to fact check for you, Dr. Cicala, we have somebody here who can probably give us some really good insights and tell you where maybe there was something that could have been improved on. So with that, I want to introduce you all to Kelsey Bro. Welcome, Kelsey. We're so excited you're here. Kelsey is the executive director of King Manor, which is a museum, a national landmark, and so excited because you're the person who holds the story of Rufus, right? You hold that story and you continue to make sure that it stands the test of time, right?
That's what I do.
So tell us a little bit more about what you do. What is King Manor? Where are you? Are we on Mars? Because I've heard people are going to Mars, right? So maybe you're on Mars right now, but tell us what you do.
Oof, you won't catch me on Mars. I'm terrified of space. I am the executive director of King Manor Museum, so I'm coming at you live from Jamaica, New York, home of Rufus King. His body is actually buried just about a 5-minute walk from the museum. It sits in heavily downtown, urban, bustling Jamaica, right across from Family Court, which I'll talk a little bit about later, I believe. And it's a really special place. So the house, Rufus bought it in 1805, and he didn't pass away here. He passed away in his Manhattan home, but he spent a lot of time here. And his oldest son, John, who our John with us today talked about, lived there after him. And then his granddaughter, Cornelia, lived there. So almost 100 years and 3 generations of the family lived there before it became a museum in 1900. And we were supposed to celebrate our 120th anniversary as a public museum last year. A certain little COVID-19 had some other plans for us, but we still did our best. We have a lot of outdoor space. Rufus had a farm there, a working farm at its largest, about 150 acres. Our park is down to 11 acres now, but it's still a really important oasis. We get called an oasis all the time for our visitors, for our community. And so we wanted to leverage that space, especially when it became even more important during the pandemic, and welcome the community in a variety of different ways. For a long time, we've done historic tours, field trips, concerts, family craft days, and we've just done more and more of that. There's a lot of different ways to get people involved in the museum. You know, not everybody thinks they like history because maybe it was taught in a very teleological way, like this happened and then this happened. And our mission is actually to teach critical thinking for a healthier democracy. So we're inspired by Rufus King and the King family's legacy of public service, especially their anti-slavery stance in a place like Jamaica, which at the time when Rufus moved in, about 1/3 of the people who lived there owned enslaved people, and 1/3 of the people who lived there were enslaved. So somebody who stood up for what he believed was right, even at a time when that was quite unusual to do for that stance, especially kind of, you know, he did that speech in 1820 that really was the first time a statesman called in such a strong way for the immorality of slavery, really calling it out that way. And he got death threats after that. So we're inspired by his bravery and his legacy to teach critical thinking. We want people to leave the museum feeling like empowered learners, to see why we are the way we are in our world today and what they can do to fix it. History isn't something that happened. It's something that individual and collective decisions made. So we want everybody to feel like they are a part of it, because they are. And I mean, I could just go on and on, but like I said, some people don't think history is very interesting. So maybe they come for the music. Jamaica has a rich history of jazz as well.
Oh,
so
yeah.
we have jazz concerts. We started doing community curated art shows with local artists. So people will come for that. And everybody comes for whatever reason they come for, but they stay for the history, because the story of Rufus King is just so compelling, as I think Dr. Cicala's talk really illustrated.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Gosh, you are so good. I feel like I've learned so much. I've taken some notes. I know we have some guests who have joined us, so I do want to also invite them. But before I do that, thank you so much. I mean, first of all, history isn't something that happened. We made history. We are history, right? I love that. That was just so powerful. And so for those of y'all who are joining right now, I know that we've written where we came from. And so I want to just give a shout out to Karen. How's it going, Karen? We know you, Karen. So we're so excited you're here, Karen. And then we have Joe Delgado, San Antonio, Texas. Right there. We have Timothy Butler. How's it going, from Alabama? Roar Lions. Well, I'm a Leo, but I'm not sure why Roar Lions. Is that a football team?
Mascot for something.
Awesome. Any mascot that's a lion, I'm all for you. So yes,
there we go.
Roar
Rufus
Lions.
Was
yes.
a lion too.
Oh, awesome. Joe, thank you so much. So now we know to call you sir, right? Because
no. Joe, I can go back and change your grades. You know that.
Oh my gosh. So that was one of your students. That's fantastic. Tamu K Strong. Go Javelinas. I didn't go to Texas A&M Kingsville, but I know y'all are the Javelinas. And so super excited to have you all here. We also have Erin, who is Erin Weinman from Boston, Massachusetts. Welcome, Erin. And yeah, super excited that that everybody is here. And yes, thank you so much, Timothy Butler. So excited that you brought that roar of that lion in here. Yes, way to bring my identity into this right here. But again, this isn't about me. This is about this important person right here. So you may have been wondering, what does Rufus King look like? This is the Rufus King that we know. Thank you so much, Dr. Cicala, for sending us this picture. Tell us a little bit more about this legacy that you come from. Tell us about this picture and what it means to you to see this picture. How did you find out about Rufus King? Tell us all of that.
Well, like I mentioned, I found out about Rufus when I started exploring a little genealogy to get a little background on my mom's family. I had a couple of names and just started plugging in names and doing some research, and one thing led to another, and it showed me what the linkage was between me and Rufus. One of Rufus's granddaughters, Mary, and that was one thing I found out, was that so many people back then just used their parents' name. There were so many Johns and Marys in that chain. It got a little confusing after a while. But his granddaughter Mary married a man named Phineas Nightingale. Phineas is the grandson of Revolutionary War General Nathaniel Greene. And that was my linkage, was through them. So as I learned more and more about Rufus, I found a picture of him, the one that you show up on the screen. That was painted by a guy named John Trumbull, who's very famous for painting a lot of famous Revolutionary War scenes and portraits. That picture is from the National Portrait Gallery in the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. Soon after Rufus graduated from Harvard and got out of the military, he and some of his classmates used to get together in Boston to talk about the war and literature, kind of just sort of a private club, so like a Dead Poet Society kind of thing. And where they met was actually in John Trumbull's studio. They would just get together once a month or so and I guess do some wine or tea and talk about current events in Trumbull's studio, which had to be pretty cool. But Rufus just met so many people along the way. As I mentioned, when he was 10, John Adams became the family lawyer. And I think served as a role model. And Rufus was just brought up in that environment of giving back to the community, that there's an obligation, that community mattered more than individual. And I think that's one of the reasons that his family continued to serve in public good and public roles. It's just so impressive like that. And I love the picture. It's so formal looking and so professional, kind of.
Yes, very, very formal. Shout out to Susan. Welcome, Susan, from
Hello, Susie. Hello.
Yeah, so excited to have Susan here. Now, we did get a question from one of your students. So, Dr. Cicala, what is one of your favorite facts you learned during your discoveries?
Wow, about Rufus, there were so many. I think my favorite thing about Rufus was his ancestry and his descendants and what his children and grandchildren did, and kind of continuing to work in public service. That surprised me. I knew about him, but I did not know anything about the family. And I was kind of blown away. Now, his half-brother, William, who became the first governor of Maine, William was in the opposing party. William was the Democrat-Republican compared to Rufus's Federalist party. So that was pretty cool. It was impressive to learn that he was the last Federalist candidate for president in 1816. He was the last member of that party to be nominated for president of the United States. He lost in an absolute landslide to James Monroe, who, ironically, 30 years earlier, Monroe had attended Rufus's wedding, which was kind of fun. Small world. So
sorry, I was just saying wow, so I messed you up. I'm so sorry.
That's all right. What did we get the last part, or?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we did. Let me bring back a little bit about Rufus here. So I want to just go ahead and show you kind of like a zoom in on the Constitution, right? So who can spot the name first, right? So somebody spot Rufus's name, and then I don't know if anyone can go ahead and type Rufus King in the chat if you found the name. I can see it right there. Now, one of the things I have to mention that's just sidebar, don't you just love how people had craftsmanship with handwriting?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I'm like calligraphy, and every single word. It's crazy.
Yeah, that was one of the things back when I used to teach negotiation. I would talk about how the convention was probably the greatest negotiation of all time. But what I really loved was their style. And they had a level of diplomacy and mannerism about them that they may disagree, but there wasn't the name calling and all the nonsense we have today. They worked together. There was a purpose behind their gathering, and they all understood and appreciated that, and they worked towards that end. And that impressed me a lot about what they did and how they did it. And I wish we could kind of go back to a little more of that style and manner that they had back then.
Yes, not only in writing, but also in just your identity. And Kelsey, tell us a little bit about where are all these documents that show Rufus King at your museum? What kind of maybe artifacts do you have as a representative of that period?
Sure. So since the family lived there for about 100 years, they changed the style of the house a lot. At one point, it was very Victorian when his granddaughter lived there. But we're actually very lucky that it stopped being a family-owned home in 1896. So much of the architectural details, including the back servants' staircase, because Rufus King had many paid live-in servants who lived with him, about 8 or so, depending on how many folks were living at the house at the time. So we have a lot of this really interesting architectural legacy of the house that shows how people lived. And we're actually going to be opening an exhibit next month about federal design that showcases a really special artifact that we have never had on display. We recently got it restored thanks to a grant from the Greater Hudson Heritage Network and the Robert David Lyon Gardner Foundation. It's one of Mary Alsop King's gowns, Rufus's wife,
Wow.
that she wore when he was minister plenipotentiary to the Court of St. James. It's beautiful, one of those long white Federalist gowns, and it has a lot of history to it. So definitely check out our website if you can't come in person to see that exhibit. That's one of our most delicate and special artifacts that we've never had on display. We recently acquired a set of table knives and a skewer that has Rufus King's crest on it. It's a lion paw like this. And
Roar Lions.
Yep. Oh, and we also have these pins that I wanted to show, because this lion head right here that you see was actually directly taken from the lion head kind of finials on one of our desks that was actually owned by Rufus King, that was restored recently. So we had these pins produced, they're three-dimensional, that copy that lion head that's on his desk. So we have that as well, which is really special. All these things that people really sat at or touched. We have several of his books. Most of them are at the New York Historical Society, which he helped found. So it's a great place for them. People can come and do research there. They can come and do research with us too. And some of his books that we have his signature in there, just like you see on the screen. And it's really special. I love to take those books off of his bookshelves and show them to people. It's like, you know, something he really touched, and kind of just feel that visceral sense of history. And, you know, in King Manor, you can just walk in the rooms. There's not barriers and stuff. You do have to take a guided tour because we don't have text on the walls, but they're very conversational. We're not going to be like, this is this, this is that. It's very kind of personalized to what people are interested in. And we love to be able to show them certain things like that. We also have a suit that was given to us by another of Rufus King's descendants that his son Charles wore, also when the family was in England for Rufus's ambassadorship. A lot of really special stuff, you know, some papers, receipts, a lot of like household receipts, how many apples or bushels of wheat or whatever, kind of things like that really show the daily life, which I think is something really special about King Manor and all of those historic sites that have been preserved. Is, you know, documents like the Constitution are very well preserved that show the mind of the statesman who helped create that, but where did they get that mentality from, right? So being able to see something about their domestic and personal life helps us really to understand where these people were coming from in making these decisions.
I love that. And I like how you're bringing in this whole feeling of, you know, when you visit the museum, you get the sense of this is how they lived, right? I mean, as you are, how you throw those covers off in the morning, how you approach the day maybe is a representative of how you attack the day, the things you do, and the legacy you leave, right? So it's really great. And I love how you said the gown has history, right? I'm like, okay, I see this huge gown, and like literally I see history just flowing from it. So
I have a question.
yes, go ahead.
I was wondering, you talked about how big a library did he have? Because I know he was an avid reader, but how many books? Any idea?
He had over 4,000 books, which would put his library at one of the largest private collections in the U.S. at the time, and bigger than the Library of Congress until it was burnt down in the War of 1812. And then Jefferson, Rufus's kind of nemesis, donated his collection. So really big. And there's a lot of funny stories about Rufus collecting books. His son, John, kind of wrote him a letter like, oh, Dad, I'm starting to collect books now. And Rufus is like, oh, son, I don't think you should be doing that until you're older. You need to have more wisdom to amass a proper, well-rounded collection. He was very much like that. We have a lot of letters from him that are kind of a little stingy with the money, but he really valued things not for their materiality or necessarily even for their status, but for what they can give to you as a person, you know, to inform and enrich your mind. And I think that's something, you know, maybe I'm getting on a little soapbox here, but I think that's something really special about Rufus King. His parents actually were slave owners, and Rufus King, you know, when he first joined the Revolution, had kind of a very narrow Atlantic, northern New England view of the world and the way that the colonies then should be united and what that kind of structure should look like. He was definitely looking east toward maritime commerce, not west to expanding. And he became a lot more nationalist instead of localized to that New England area. When he served in the war, saw more parts of the country and just interacted with more people. And I think that idea of being able to learn from your experiences and admit that you're growing and learning is really, really important. One of my very favorite things about Rufus King is that he, and this is a little strange for us today because we really value transparency in kind of a different way, but he believed that when they were writing the Constitution, they shouldn't take a vote or notes of who voted what, because he wanted people to be able to learn and grow from their experiences. And he thought that if there was a record of who voted for what during the process of developing the Constitution, that people would sort of be like on record for voting for a certain thing and then not able to change their mind as they learned and grew from doing this process. So the idea of kind of keeping that secret maybe sounds a little bit antithetical to our ideas of freedom of information and transparency today, but at the time it had a real value of allowing people to not necessarily be like hardline party people. Even as the party lines were pretty nascent in the country, there was a lot of division. So Rufus is really instrumental in making that happen so that the Constitution could be the compromise that it is today. And of course, it's a more perfect union, not perfect. And that's another thing that we celebrate at the museum, the idea that we can all make the country a better place.
And that was one of the great things they did during the convention. And Rufus was a very late addition as a Massachusetts delegate. And initially he was kind of opposed to the idea and he didn't think it would work. But when they set up the convention, the first thing they did was decide on the rules. And I think when they set it up to be what's known as committee as a whole, where you can go back and revisit anything we've talked about, nothing is set in stone. You can go back and talk about something we've already voted on, nothing. So everything was open. And like you pointed out, not having what was discussed probably made ratification a lot easier. That was one of the debates they had towards the end. One of the committees Rufus was on was the Committee of Postponed Matters. Sometimes it was called the Committee of Leftovers. And it was a lot of the stuff that just kind of got tabled. They dealt with it at the end. But when they were talking about how to go about ratifying, he and Madison actually put into the Constitution that it had to get ratified by state convention. They didn't want to leave it up to the state legislators because, no, it needs to be appointed members to go to a state convention to ratify the Constitution. You can't leave it up to the legislators. And that was a very, very smart move on their part because there were a lot of states that were not in favor of this. There were a lot of people back then that were not crazy about the idea. Patrick Henry, for example, he was infamously opposed to having a republic of republics. I believe I read somewhere that Henry wanted to be the president of Virginia. Mm-hmm. So there were a lot of folks that were not keen on the idea of having a centralized government with state control. It was one of the reasons that 2 of the 3 delegates from New York, Hamilton's buddies, left. Mm-hmm. They just didn't think it was right. But luckily, the rest of them saw it through, and they made the moves up front with the rules and committee as a whole and keeping it quiet, which had to be difficult. Not letting anybody know what was going on because they were there for 4 months in Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. Not an easy thing to do, but they understood what they were trying to do. So kudos.
Rufus King attended more of those meetings than anybody else. So he was really dedicated to that process. More
committees. He was there opening day. In fact, I think on opening day, he was the only New Englander that was even there to begin with. So yeah, he was dedicated.
Love that. So, Kelsey, while you were talking, Aaron says such an amazing library. I want to bring the attention again. Here's the link, kingmanor.org. So if you want to go and visit the museum, there is the link for you. Physically visiting it, you are in Jamaica, New York?
Yes, Jamaica, New York. It has nothing to do with the island. Jamaica comes from although there are many folks from the Caribbean diaspora who live here today, which is awesome.
Yes.
But the word comes from Yameko, which was maybe a Canarsie Lenape word that meant like place of the beaver, because there used to be a beaver pond here. Now there's only one trace of that. It's called Beaver Road. It's kind of an industrial area, so definitely not the bucolic farmland that Rufus King knew here. But while we're kind of on the subject of Jamaica, the island,
Yeah.
and Jamaica Queens, today, for Citizenship Day, we swore in 40 new citizens from around the world, including one person from Jamaica, the island. So that's really special. There were 15 different countries represented. And this is something that we've done almost every year since the 1990s. So it's really, really special to do that. And you know, Jamaica, New York, I mean, it could not be more accessible. There is literally no form of transportation that doesn't get you to King Manor. We've got planes, trains, buses, bikes, car. We even have a parking lot, which New York free parking is unheard of, so we got that.
Wow. Love that. So I give a shout out to Timothy, gives a shout out to you, sorry. On behalf of Timothy, I give a shout out to you, Kelsey. I think you maybe ahead of time knew that this question was coming, and you gave us, I don't know whether this is it, maybe you have another tip for us, but I think we were just trying to get from you, you know, we're glad you're here, but also about, you know, what resonated with you. And I think you had mentioned that the one thing that resonated was this whole concept of anonymizing the votes, so that as you learned more information, you were able to change your mind without feeling pressure for your previous decisions. And isn't that the true fact of life, right? We all learn more and we're able to pivot as necessary. So I don't know if that's the fact, but if you have something else, please add.
Yeah, gosh, I wasn't actually expecting the question about what about my background. I mean, my background is not that special. I'm not related to Rufus King or anyone like that. But I've always been very curious about the world. I grew up in a family with not a ton of resources. So I would go to the library and read books about other cultures, other countries, and kind of like travel through reading books, through reading cookbooks and trying to experience the cuisine of other places. And so then when I went out east for college, I'm from Boulder, Colorado originally, to really be where the American Revolution happened was really special to me. I remember sitting on my sofa in the living room as a teenager, reading books about people like Alexander Hamilton, one of Rufus King's best friends, being like, wow, they were almost the same age as me. And I'm sitting here like studying for my international baccalaureate exams where they were fighting in the revolution. So that idea that like people could really make a difference was really important to me. It's a very weird fact, but I had a lot of trauma over the polar ice caps melting when I was 4, and I didn't really know what to do about that because I felt so small. And I went to the library and did some research, and I pledged to never own a car. I would bring reusable bags to the grocery store, kind of things like that. That it's really not the individual that is the biggest polluter, if we want to be real specific about climate change, but the idea that you could make a difference, I think kind of helped me deal with some of that climate anxiety as a younger person. And then the kind of founding generation and how these folks who, like Rufus, I mean, his dad was, a fairly wealthy merchant, but,
yeah.
And therefore prominent in his town, but, not super wealthy, not from royalty or any type of background like that then his progeny could go on to make a big difference, and not just Rufus, but so many people in his family, not only his own generation, like his half brother, but even like on and on and on. I think some of his family members are still in politics, although some of them are on the opposite side. And the women too. I mean, one of his descendants founded the children's wing of a hospital in New Jersey. So a lot of things happening and with the King family that resonate with me, and I think with a lot of folks. When people come to the museum, no matter what their background is, they feel a connection to that story.
I love it. And how fitting that we are celebrating Rufus King, signer of the Constitution of the United States of America, on this Constitution Day, which is all about citizenryness. I don't know if that's even a word. Did I make a word? And I have to give a shout out to my friend, my fellow curator of TEDxColePark, Dr. Tammy Francis says hello to you all. And I would be remiss if I did not mention that tomorrow, starting at 10 o'clock Central Time, we are actually launching our own TEDx event called The Case for Optimism. And it's going to be emceed by none other than Dr. Tammy Francis. So we're super excited to have you here, Dr. Tammy. So with that, I want to jump right into finding out about the genealogy, just very swiftly. about Rufus King. So I have a graphic that you actually texted to me. So this is like
Right.
me waiting for this session to start. My phone buzzes and there's a text from Dr. Cicala about this generation genealogy. So tell us a little bit about the generations. And as you're going, I'm going to be counting. And if you don't mind, just start to mention, how it leads up to you. How many generations removed are you from Rufus?
Well, I believe he's my fifth great grandfather. Let me kind of reverse engineer. At the very bottom, Ann M. Troop Pettit is my mom.
Okay.
Her father, Robert Alexander Troop, son of Robert James Troop, son of Mary Nightingale. She was the one who married Phineas Nightingale, I believe, who was Nathaniel Greene's grandson. He was the daughter for Mary Ray King, and Mary Ray King was the daughter of John Alsop King, Rufus's son. John Alsop King was the one that went on to become governor of New York for a little while. So that's where I found the lineage and the linkage within the program that I was using. I don't want to give company names because I know we're not supposed to do that.
Sure.
But that was the connection, and the documentation that I was able to access and find between marriage certificates, birth certificates, death, find a grave. That's what led me to Rufus.
Wow.
And there's no DNA, so I don't know, but the connection document wise was there. And even if there's not a blood link, it's what an incredible story though. I had never heard of this guy until a few years ago. And the more I learned, the more amazing of a story it seemed to me. And the more surprised I was that we'd never heard of him.
Right.
He was there for so much of it. So
Yeah.
I don't know if we just had bad PR or what the deal was, but it was just an incredible story.
Yeah.
And what his ancestors did and how he fought for things and did it diplomatically and did it with style and never missed a day and worked and had an incredible work ethic. When President Washington wanted him as Secretary of State, but he turned it down and said, no, I want to go to England. Because his mentor, John Adams, had been the first minister to England. And Rufus kind of, I think, wanted to follow in John Adams's footsteps a little bit. So many people started and served in that role as minister to England. Not only John Adams, but John Quincy, Martin Van Buren was our minister in England. And I think that had an appeal for Rufus. How can I do the most good for my country and my community and society? And I think he saw opportunity and helping to mend some fences and repair some damaged relationships between us and England.
Yes. Wow.
So now there's also a Robert Troop that was one of the first Supreme Court justices. It was Hamilton's roommate in college was a Robert Troop. I don't know. I haven't gone down. I got so caught up with Rufus, I haven't pursued the Robert Troop line yet, but that might be an interesting road to go down later on.
All right. It sounds like you're having fun doing this. I think it's kind of like you're like, oh, look what I found. And then obviously we have Kelsey here who can just connect dots for you. So this sounds like so much fun. It actually sounds a lot like one of my other friends. I don't know if you know this person, Raymond Chong. He has actually mapped his generations of Chinese Americans for 7 generations, right? And he actually even traveled back to China and saw his ancestral land. And
wow.
Anyway, long story short, it sounds like so much fun, genealogy, right? Finding out about your family, finding out about your legacy. And so with that, I want to jump straight into some TEDx questions because we always get questions about how does it feel to give a TED Talk? How did you come up with this idea? And so, I want to just ask you casually, I guess you could say, in terms of thinking about all your expertise and all the things you could have possibly talked about on a TED stage, tell us about this idea of feeling so strongly to share the story of Rufus King. How did you develop this idea to be in 10 minutes? How did you tell this story in 10 minutes or less?
Okay. I wasn't expecting that question. When I first saw that you were doing the case for optimism, I had an idea and submitted a proposal to be part of that. And after I sent the proposal in later that night, and I don't know why it didn't occur to me at the time, it then hit me that, wait a minute, September 18th, which is the optimism event date. Well, that's Constitution Day weekend. And I thought there was probably nothing more optimistic than what those guys in Philadelphia were trying to accomplish. Trying to create a republic of republics that had never been successful. It had never really happened and worked before, but they felt they could do it. They thought there was a way we can unify everybody and take the Articles of Confederation and make it work and have a unified. That is a level of optimism, because so many people were against it and they thought, no way, you've had 2 different conventions, you still couldn't come to terms, people weren't showing up. So that was my angle. But that night I thought, you need to tell Rufus' story. So I sat down a day or 2 later and wrote out a whole entire new proposal to do the story of Rufus, because I thought it was a story that needed to be told and needed to be shared. And I sent it in, and then I sent you guys an email saying, please, that first thing I sent, throw it away, forget about that one. No. We need to talk about Rufus, what he did, what his family did, the legacy, and the lessons we can learn from that lifestyle, and what he did and what was important. That's a message that needs to get out. So I put together the script, sent it all in. You guys liked the idea. And then you told me 5 minutes, maybe 5 to 7. Yeah, Kelsey's laughing right now because, there's no way to tell his story in 5 minutes without going very, very general, which is what I did. There were so many things I had to leave out. This could so easily be not only an 18 or 20 minute talk. This could be a multi-series, hour-long program. There's so much about Rufus and the different parts of his life and what he did, from his childhood with his dad, Richard, who was like a large lumber exporter in the state of Maine, when the house got attacked because they thought his dad was a royalist, which is what led them to meeting John Adams, and all the parts in his life, and how he was kind of groomed and brought up around an atmosphere to work with the community, to learn to negotiate, to work with each other and try to work for the common good of everybody, the general welfare, if you will, to quote from the preamble a little bit. So it was just a fascinating story. And I just had to go general. I just had to kind of go back, and I'd record and time it. And it was challenging because as I learned more stuff, it kept getting longer. And I knew you were going to cut me out with that. So I just went really general with a lot of it. And there were many parts of his life and experiences that got left out because there just wasn't time to cover it in 5 to 7 minutes.
Yes.
Incredible story. And maybe there'll be a book one day. Who knows?
Yes. And maybe you're going to be the one who writes the story, or maybe we even just created a whole other opportunity to be able to tell this story in its entirety.
Maybe a musical.
Yes, I do want to actually also ask you specifically about the value of you doing a TED Talk. So, it was a question I asked. I was like, hey, would you be interested in giving a TED Talk? And then you essentially were like, oh, I don't know. And then you said yes, you submitted. And so, so it was kind of like a back and forth. So I want you to give some advice to anyone who is out there who feels that they have a personal story to share, or they have a story that they know about in their legacy that they want to share. What advice would you give them?
Do it. I'm a professor. I used to do seminars when I was down in Corpus Christi. That's how we got to know each other. I got to meet Dr. Chong. And I've always liked doing it. And I always like having a story to tell. One of the things I try to do in a classroom is tell stories and give examples. I think it makes for a good reference point. So if there's anybody out there that has an idea they think is worth sharing, or they want to let other people know about, absolutely find the nearby TED or a TEDx and submit your proposal. If I can do it, anybody can do it. Don't be scared by it. It was a lot of fun. It was very fortunate to have you there to help and edit and say, no, that's too long. It sounds like a history lecture. It's boring. Throw that stuff out. Revert. It always helps. Always helps to have somebody kind of help you that's been there and done that and can lend a little expertise.
Yes.
I learned so much tonight from Kelsey. I didn't know the library was that large. I tried to get up there last year. I think I know where I'm going come Christmas.
There you go. There you go. And so as we're wrapping up today, Kelsey, do you want to lead us in some closing comments? Do you have any key takeaways for us?
Gosh, I mean, what Dr. Cicala said was just spot on. There's so much there. I mean, we've had tours at the museum. I once was able to give a tour to some Swedish people who were there to visit the UN, and I invited to come visit King Manor, and the tour was like almost 4 hours, because we just got talking about so much stuff, modern politics versus politics back then, just material culture, everything. So I really thank you for having me on the program to help share Rufus King's story, and I hope that all of you will engage with the museum at some point, either in person or online, because there's just so much out there. And it's not, Rufus King's story touches the lives of a lot of people, right? So John Adams was kind of a mentor to him. Then he was kind of a mentor to John Quincy Adams, who actually did come and spend some nights at King Manor, and we have an interpreted room to talk about that, because we're trying to expand our narrative that we tell about anti-slavery activism, especially in New York. So on our website, we also have a walking tour, which you can do from the comfort of your sofa on your phone. There's pictures, video, that also talks about the history of Black activism for anti-slavery and civil rights in Jamaica, and all of that continues still today. I mean, King Manor was very fortunate because last summer we had a Black Lives Matter mural painted on the street in between King Manor and the family courthouse. And the family courthouse that's across the street from us is named after Thurgood Marshall. So that legacy just really continues and has a big impact on our area and on a lot of folks. And Jamaica is where you land when you land at JFK. So, and the Long Island Railroad was part of Rufus King's property. So whether you know it or not, you've engaged with Rufus King if you've been to New York.
Ooh, I love that little.
Isn't that
cool? All these fun facts. I'm like, keep going, keep going. I wish we could.
It was so fun because my mom was from Huntington. That was where my mom grew up. So, and Jamaica had a couple of other famous people. Mario Cuomo, governor of New York, was born there. Donald Trump was born there. So that whole area, there's just something political in the water up there. It's just so cool. We got to get there.
All right. And then we also have one of y'all's fans watching right now, Bill Wilson. How's it going, Bill? Bill has some insights for us at the end of the
Bill Wilson, I miss you.
Yes, great story about an illustrious ancestor and his role in the founding of our country. And can I mention something about this whole entire presentation today and your contribution to it, John and Kelsey? We always think about the person who won, but we forget who was there through it all, right? And it's always the people who may not have won, what part of the legacy, right? What part of the story and what part of the hard work that was there. So imagine how many other people who didn't become president of the United States had a part to play in making the presidency we have today. So
Rufus lost so many elections. Rufus lost for vice president in 04, 08. He lost for state assembly in 07. He lost for New York governor. He lost, but he never gave up. He kept trying, kept plugging away. And I love it.
He knew he was going to lose, but he felt like it was important anyway, that kind of sense of duty.
I love that. And that's the point, right? Show up anyway. That's what champions for community do. They say, yes, that's working. And when it's no, they're like, I am there and I'll make sure that my voice is heard. So we really appreciate that. We have Erin again, amazing account. Thanks, Kelsey. And thanks, Dr. Cicala. I think for me, this just reiterates to me how you can lose and win at the same time, right? So let's give a shout out to, I don't want to say to all the losers, but yes, let's give a shout out to all the people who've either come in second, third, fourth. But guess what? I don't remember whose quote this is from, but it's all about being in the arena, right? It's all about just being there in the fight and making it work.
Skin in the game.
I'm sorry, who was that?
No, you got to have skin in the game.
You got to have skin in the game. You got to be there, right? So whether you win or lose, you are the one who is fighting for it, right? You're in the arena. Gosh, why can I not remember the name of that quote so that somebody can go and pull it for us? But yes, super excited to have you all on the show today. So with that, I thank you for your time, Kelsey. Thank you for being here. And we look forward to seeing you next time, Kelsey.
Love to be back. Thanks for having me.
Yes.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Cicala, super excited that
this was fun. Thank you.
I know, and I really have to tell you, this opportunity to be able to, sort of pull your TED Talk from our Case of Optimism opportunity. I think this was a much better representation of the work that you've done. I think we were able to really unpack a really great talk that you gave. And not only that, we added a really great layer of Kelsey's insights and then all that background knowledge.
Absolutely.
Yes, and I hope other people will be engaged in that as well. So we have Joe saying, great job, everyone. Thank you for a wonderful history lesson, right?
One of my negotiation students.
negotiations.
It was so great that we got to do this on Constitution Day. Thank you for moving and going through everything you had to do to get it done today. That's perfect.
Yes, it was perfect. And I appreciate you too. Thank you so much, Dr. Cicala.
Thank you, ma'am.
Bye-bye. And there you have it. Super excited to have celebrated Dr. Cicala's talk. Like I mentioned, this talk has already been approved by TED. So you can go on the TED.com website right now and be able to find that TED talk. I do want to mention that if you want to find out more about Dr. Cicala, you can always go to our TEDxColePark website, or you can visit Dr. Cicala's website. He has a website, www.jcicala.com. I'm pretty sure he's going to have his TED Talk linked there pretty soon from the TED website. So go ahead and engage with Dr. Cicala. Here's our website, TEDxColeParkStudio. Now, if you were to go to TEDxColeParkStudio right now, you would find out more about the event that we're having tomorrow. So tomorrow, we're actually going to be hosting an event called The Case for Optimism. We are making the case that aside from all the, I guess you could say, strife we've had in the latest, our pandemic, our social justice considerations, we're making a case for optimism. And so we hope you will join us. We have a great slate of speakers. We're going to have Chris Anderson is going to be presenting one of our talks. We have a talk about chocolate. We're going to have Lizzo there. We're going to have Suhani, who's one of our students here in Corpus Christi, Texas, presenting. We have Stephen English, who's a communication trainer, and he's here in Texas with us. We have Jim Chuchu from Kenya giving a presentation as well. And for those of y'all who know Zach King is also going to be there. So with that, I just want to thank you all so much for being here today. And I hope that you will continue to engage with us with all of our TEDx opportunities. And I really hope that those of you who watch this and maybe have a legacy of a story in your family, in your lineage that you want to tell, please consider applying to be a speaker on our TEDx Cole Park stage. So you can always go to our website, www.TEDxColePark.com/studio, apply, and let's talk about it. Let's plan. You're not going to be alone. We will help you. And these studio talks are produced by us, by volunteers all across Texas. And I guess you could even say the world. We're actually starting to get people who are applying from as far as Brazil. We've had an application from India. So we're curating all of that for you. And we hope you will be a part of it. We know you've got a story. So come over here and tell us your story. So dream big, strive to create the best talk you've ever given. And most importantly, there is no such thing as a formula for TED Talks. It's just the talk of your life. What do you want the world to know so that the world knows that you matter? So show us your real you. And as we are ending today, we look forward to producing more content that is community-driven and bias-free. Join us at our TEDx community. Again, that link, in case you missed it, I guess it's everywhere on the screen, TEDxColePark.com/studio. We will see you all next time. Bye.